Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1790 of our daily content grind. So, I announced a schedule of sorts last week before I went to MetroCon, and I was going to do some YOLO Park reviews for Thursday and Friday. However, this came up while I was away. We got to talk about it because there is a lot of news to glean from it. TFW 2005 did a full interview Q&A thing with Hasbro, with the Transformers team, and they told us a ton about upcoming stuff, a lot of things we've been curious about, etc., etc. So we are going to go through that today. I'm going to give you like a general quick summary of it for you to just listen to. I'm not going to read it verbatim. If you want to read the whole thing verbatim, get literally everything they said, go to the article on TFW 2005. I'll link it in the description below. I am just going to go give my thoughts as we go through this entire thing. So, see, we start with Titan Scorn. No shared tooling with Grimlock, all brand new tooling, which is surprising because those are going to be expensive toys. I would assume they would want to find ways of doing retooling, but it comes down to how different they are to transform. There is no way to reuse the tooling, which that makes sense, especially once we get into the next two. Slug and Strafe have no way of being reused in any way, shape, or form. With the development of Scorn, is there anything you learned from Grimlock that you improve on? And that basically comes down to they made the beast mode a lot more articulated. Granted, because of transformation, Grimlock really couldn't be. It's one reason why his jaw does not move, because the engineering to turn it into the shoulder pauldrons took priority. But they did make sure that Scorn has a lot more articulation in the head, in the neck, in the tail. The tail is ratchet jointed, which is great to hear. And yeah, they did hear the feedback on Grimlock. He has articulated jaw, which again, I don't think is really a feedback thing as much as it is, yeah, Grimlock just didn't have the capability for it. Scorn does not have blast effect ports, does have 5mm ports to hold all of his spines together, so you can skewer Transformers on it. That's kind of demented, but I'll take it. See, with Icons, Optimus, and Megatron, it was always the plan to be those characters, and that was always the plan. They did want to do a little bit of different, which is why Megatron's got a double barrel blaster instead of the giant forearm cannon, just to make it a little bit more unique. And it's mostly, yeah, it's based on just get the icons to transform. Character is almost secondary in that one. And chance for Predacon and Maximal icons, seeing how sales go. Basically, if you don't see any more after this, then you know how sales went. They do say that this is something different, maybe for a more casual fan, lower price points, primarily for the alt mode. But that said, these things are close to $50, which I would not call like casual price point. Let's see, it Transformers Animated Studio and Transformers Prime Fears released in studio series based directly off the show models, or they have some stylizations. And they said they would be show accurate, and I want to believe that's because they got the feedback on the generationified versions that we have been seeing for like animated characters and Prime figures, and like the blunt force feedback that we've been giving about not liking those. Yeah, which is why we are pulling them out of generations to be focused on being true to the content instead of close to the content. Basically following the model that 86 separated. So it basically confirms that a lot of our retro product is going to end up in studio series in the future, and generations is going to be more for playing around. Which, you know, I don't mind. I don't mind the shift. Let's see, we're asking imports of Japanese lines like Wild King. It's being explored. They're on the table. Fans are talking about it a lot, which has gotten Hasbro's attention. They just don't usually do things that are kid focused as far as imports and things for American collectors to buy. But it does show, they do see that we want it. So hopefully that is something that happens. I am still an abyss range short of completing the original set, and with import nonsense, I really don't want to try for any of the new figures at the moment. If we could get something that skirts around that, like an official import, that would be much, much preferred. Let's see. Could we get the things out? Could we get things like Hasbro Asia gets for exclusives like toy-based stickers to back in? Not a priority for our market, but it is on the table. They commonly say everything is on the table, so I'm expecting on the table to be the answer for a lot of things, whether or not they are actually being considered or not. I think it is a matter of these are possibilities. It is possible for us to include sticker sheets based on the toys. It is possible for us to import Wild King. And that's what they mean by on the table. It's something that they are aware of, that they could do, but priority-wise, are they actually going to do it? We don't know. Let's see. Learning is okay for the new Haslab Lyle Kaiser. What was the process for improving the quality control? He was a little bit easier in terms of this. No vac metal, no hot oil stamping or anything like that. So we were able to designate more time into making sure everything was spick and span. I'm sure, there were no sacrifices taken on Omega, so we're just as surprised when he had Q&A issues. So like, okay, we'll accept this risk, that's fine, fans won't care, none of that. We have the exact same standards. We want to be clear, the standards are on Haslab, for on every single Haslab, even when the final production missed a mark in certain aspects. So they do run a tight ship with Haslab to make sure these things come off. So like the issue we had with Omega Prime was not a Hasbro thing. It was more likely the factory taking a shortcut, cutting a corner somewhere, and that's how, and we're essentially just getting something wrong in the production. That is how we end up with those mistakes. Otherwise, Hasbro does try to run a tight ship for them. And they are still working on getting the full combined Omega Prime, as they kept saying exists. They keep saying the instructions are on the way. Any progress on making the Activision games available again? Now, this is entirely up to Activision at this point. I don't think anyone at Hasbro would say no to this. It's a matter of Activision having the original files still and being willing to put them out again, being willing to sign off licenses again. Also, it's kind of like up in the air who's got the Transformer video game license after Reactivate, went the way of the dodo. So I don't know exactly who would have to sign off on that at the moment. But suffice to say, you're not gonna get that answer out of the toy team. That's a legal department thing. See, Gamer Edition no longer exists as a sub-segment, but just as Studio Series itself. It makes sense. Like, originally it seems like the plan was to just divide up Studio Series into these different little segments of it. Gamer Edition, Comic Edition, etc. But now it's literally just whatever they want to do from whatever universe at a time. So, they do say that it does still exist. It's just not a separate designation anymore. In the same way, well, I was going to say in the same way like Generations doesn't really do that anymore, but they did do that for a while, didn't they? Not really in Age of the Primes, so I guess that makes sense. Let's see. Lots of conversations, what we do to continue to number them. Personally voted means they're talking about like still like putting the numbering on them. So there was that. Let's see. Yes, and then it's more about like keeping the logos clean. It's more like how do we continue to number them if we're going to separate them into different like segments, and that makes sense. But apparently, yeah, like they still have it in mind to do more Generation style video game based toys. Continuing Space Bridge reveals, it basically goes into we don't have full control over what we are able to do on a fan stream. So that's a lot of legal telling them this is far enough along to reveal that it's on the way. I'm still very much in the mindset of this like corporate espionage mindset really should not exist anymore. We have so many toy companies that announce what they are doing literally years ahead of when it will actually come out. And Hasbro is one of those companies that's still very old-fashioned mindset thinking, if we announce these toys now, someone might rip us off. If we announce, in one hand, it might be along the lines of, we don't want to announce anything that might still be at danger of getting canceled. That's one mindset to it. But really, I think that would be a minor annoyance compared to being left in the dark for so long. I would like to know as soon as possible what's on the way. That way I can kind of properly prepare and the hype machine can be at like maximum overdrive all the time. And I'm not just saying that for content. Let's see, so yeah, and they talk about the kind of things that they are allowed to do, and they do enjoy doing that. They want to do it more. It's just a matter of time and what they're allowed to say. So supposedly, Nexus Prime is not a reaction to the fan feedback on the figure. And it would be better for Mark to answer. Mark is not there. Nate and Evan both said Mark would be the one. Mark would be the one to ask, because apparently he was a lot more hands-on on this. But apparently no. According to them, the plan always was what it seems to be right now. Once they decided that Nexus was going to be a replacement torso for a frame at the Voyager class, they decided, yeah, we're doing repaints of these particular toys in order to make a full combiner team. They are to be determined on a frame. And I feel like that is because getting a frame out would be exceptionally tricky at the moment. Right now, you are still meant to be using the Superion frame. And that is just how it is going to go until they make another decision. But that is incredibly frustrating, because I don't want to tear my Superion apart just to build a really lame attempt at Nexus Prime that is already making a ton of exceptions to exist in the first place. So I'm not crazy about that one. I still don't like this. It still does feel very reactionary, and I would call it reactionary, except head molds exist for the new versions. That means, yes, there was some plan. They wouldn't be able to tool that and get it production ready, if in the time span we've been like yelling about Nexus. So yes, there is proof that yes, this was the plan. I just don't think it's a very good plan. With mainline moving to be more about sandbox exploration, will this affect the timelines line in the future? So it's not really expected to affect them. They're going to still be a Pulse exclusive. They're still going to be like one-off, like little batches. The big thing here is that they will not be doing one in 2027. And that's probably because they have plenty of other exclusives on the slate that they are going to be doing. With the switch to Age of Evolution, I'm sure there's a lot of Generation Selects or Pulse exclusives they could be releasing that's like stuff left over from Age of the Primes that they just didn't get around to. So, yeah, for whatever reason, yes, they are taking a break. And I feel like that is also great to figure out what the next one is going to be. I don't want it to just be animals that are themed like the era that their robot modes are inspired by, I would like to have this take place in eras that have actual vehicles that the Transformers could transform into. So, good to take the year off so they're not rushing it out. I would really like to see what they come up with next. Competing priorities. We push that one out of here. And okay, so yeah, essentially what they've essentially what they have here is like Shockwave is on the way. And Shockwave went from a planned Voyager to a leader class. So now that is where their priority went, is like getting something that special out. So, things had to be taking a break. So fan vote was more of a marketing push, so the fan vote thing is like not something they really control, but so like if Shockwave does not do well, probably will be quiet for a little bit because like, well, you guys voted for this and you're not even supporting it. And that is true. And it's a very, downer way of looking at it, but it's completely accurate. Like we voted for this and we didn't buy it. So that would probably put a big stop on anything fan vote from here on out. So I'm hoping it works. Like, it really does feel like a fun, different figure. And it feels like they're putting a lot of effort into it, so like I hope it does well. Let's see, and if this does extremely well, it's not like they would like lean forward into doing like a whole bunch of aquatic transformers. More along the lines of the fan vote will come back, and yeah, we will give another shot on this one. So basically, let's see. So originally it was a new character. For multiple reasons, we didn't go that path. So the feedback we got from some just kind of casual fans is Transformers is overcomplicated. It's very hard to dive in. So that's why we say, okay, instead of introducing an all-new character, let's go back to one of our icons, but still have fan feedback. Hence why we got a selection of characters to pick from, and we just ended up liking Shockwave the most, oddly enough. So yeah, that makes sense too. That makes sense. Like, they want this to have as much appeal as possible, because this is a weird thing to do. Not only the fan vote aspect, but just because it is a weird transformer to make. It's Shockwave turning into a whale. You don't have a repaint or retool to get out of this in any way, shape, or form. Even if you go to the likes of like IDW Tidal Wave, who was a whale, he was not a mechanical one. He certainly didn't look like Shockwave in robot mode. So at best, you're looking at a one-off figure. Maybe you do a gray repaint at some point if this does well enough to warrant it. But it does make sense, like, to do it as a character people know and as a very popular character. That way there is some guarantee that at least some units will sell no matter what. It's kind of a risk-free option as well as just being an easy-to-approach one. So someone asked with like made to order if we could get like Golden Lagoon sets, and they said it's possible, but it is not a priority. And that does make sense. There's not a whole lot of people who would be like jumping up and down for all gold releases of some of these characters, particularly with the history gold plastic tends to have. And they do, and Nate mentions that like when they talk about redeco opportunities, there are much cooler and more meaningful things they could do. So while Golden Lagoon does present you this chance to have like, oh, a bunch of golden Transformers, it is just a bunch of Transformers all in the exact same color, and it's taking up budget, time at the factory, time on the shelves that could go to things that are worth a lot more to fans than just like the final scene of one episode. So I do like it for that. I like the mindset of that, of, it's a niche repaint. You're not going to see a lot of people get into it, and there's things they'd rather make. Golden Lagoon exists, but it's not the most inspiring. And I like that. I like that they're keeping that in mind. So for now, this is how we're starting. They're talking about with made to order being starting off with repaints that otherwise would not, they're more niche, steering away from brand new molds for now. But they say they want to do at least one a year for now. If it gets popular, I'm sure they would love to expand on that, and I know there's plenty they could do with a made to order model that would let them get away with a lot of things that they cannot currently get away with. But we'll see how this one goes. They didn't mention how well the set's doing already. We're just going to have to wait and see when the time frame is up and how many actually get shipped out. So it's going to be a long wait to see how this performed. But I guess if we see one next year, we'll know that it performed well. Okay, can you give us any more details on the Studio Series G1 subline? Will A6 characters be remade again in it, or be limited characters that didn't appear in the movie? So it is going to be, okay, so the new G1 stuff out of Studio Series is going to be stuff that didn't appear in the movie. They're not going to start remaking all the 86 characters just because they showed up in G1. So they're basically assuring you that your 86 collection is safe. They are not going to be like instantly replacing it or anything, but they do want to, but they are trying to freshen things up. The whole point of it is to be completely new. Like new cartoon accurate molds for ones that maybe weren't quite up to snuff the last time they did them. And they basically just wanted to start doing G1 characters with the same level that Studio Series goes for like accuracy, which makes sense. We have gotten a lot of really good like Transformer toys recently, but still again, room for improvement. Let's see. So it's just going to be the branding of the characters in Studio Series. So it's not even a subline of G1. It's literally just this is Studio Series. In 2027, this is what Studio Series is going to be. And it's all seasons of G1 and Japanese G1, anything that was anime, everything is on the table there, which is good to hear. The fact that even like single out Japanese G1 tells me that there's going to be some weird realms they go to that we actually are going to get to dip into once in a while. Like if we just get like if Studio Series actually does throw like incredibly like random Japanese G1 stuff at us. Oh hey, by the way, Road Caesar's on the way. I would lose my mind. It would be hysterical to pull. It's fun to think about. It's fun to think of the possibility. Is this they're gonna keep reusing the trilogy molds, or is this the final run? So for them, it depends on the characters. They are not going to go out of their way to remake everything, though inevitably they are going to redo those characters. Just it's going to be a long way down the road. You know, there's no like major priority on it, and there shouldn't be. You know, like those. You know, the Cyclonus that we are getting in 86 is pretty much perfect outside of just those missing engines in the back that the Kingdom version had. Everything beyond that is about as good as you could ever make a Cyclonus toy. So what is the point of just turning around and redoing him? So anyone who's like fresh and anyone who has done really well already in Studio Series is probably safe for the next 3 or 4 years. You know, because that's about how far out development and ideas and concepting gets. So we're okay. Let's see, and they do intend on finishing the live action movie casts. You know, so that is, they want to make sure that Studio Series is shifting direction, but is not going to completely kick out what brought it to the table. They know that people still want the live action characters. Those will still be appearing in Studio Series. They do, because it's mentioned a finishing live action movie cast. They've talked in the past that Skids and Mudflap are an inevitability. Like eventually they do have to do them just to call the toy line complete. To this point, they are still not on the table. They're just aware that it has to be done. That's the last we heard of them. The fact that they said they're absolutely finishing the live action movie cast does remind you they are on the way. Let's see. For characters who only appeared as toys, will this be something for the Generation Sandbox? And they do confirm that. So there's some characters there's some decos that showed up that everybody loves so much, like Nightwatch Optimus Prime. I think those will probably end up being exclusives, but probably the focus and the priority is going to be characters that showed up in the movies, and then we'll get to the ones that didn't. So they are all keeping in mind. That there are versions of these characters that we still want toys of. They actually acknowledge that fans actually do want some of those repainted versions from the original toy lines. Like mentioning Nightwatch in the least makes me happy, because I would not mind a modern Optimus mold in the Nightwatch colors. I have my original in the Nightwatch colors. It's fantastic. I wouldn't mind seeing it in a screen accurate toy. They did confirm that the cone heads are all going to have different faces, so hopefully that means all 6 Seekers will have a unique expression, which would be great to see. Let's see, any other comic series you want to see show up for Studio Series? And they do mention Dreamwave, G1, G2 comic book stuff. So basically, again, on the table is the answer. Anything that is possible is on the table. So this is what they confirm. We know a little bit of what's coming from the leaks. And yeah, like they do mention some of that here. It's nice to know that things like Dreamwave aren't completely forgotten, much as I don't really want to give Pat Lee any kind of credit whatsoever. It's hard to deny that there is a lot of good that came out of those books. The actual focus and characterization of Micromasters, pretty much all we have as far as characters go on some of them comes from those books. We got Sunstorm, we got The Fallen, we got really important characters and concepts here. So it's good to know that they are keeping that in mind. I wouldn't, I would like to see more of that too. Just because the owner was a jackass doesn't mean that all of it should be like completely abandoned. And in seeing like G1, G2 comic book stuff would be wild as well. We got a G-Axis, so like, well, they did say that new Red Alert mold coming out would eventually become a new Sideswipe mold, which will eventually become G2, so I guess that's a given. And then Commanders, and the Studio Series Commander is going to be G1 only. We can expect other continuity. So they're not locking the big toys behind certain generations. Okay, what goes into deciding pins versus screws on figures? So that is fascinating to choose. Pins are usually used for anything that has motion. Screws are used for anything that needs to be sedentary and not moved, locked into place. So yeah, basically they've minimized the number of screws and have gone to pins a lot more because a lot more things need to actually be able to move around. Pins are also used to secure particular areas and reinforce them. So like you'll occasionally find a peg on a sensitive location that'll have a metal rod through it, things like that. So basically, they've learned when screws are the only option, and they've learned when pins are a better choice. That's basically what it comes down to. They're talking about who set up the movie diorama display on San Diego Comic-Con. That's from Creative 2 Industries, and a guy named Roman. Basically just like bragging about how big the set piece was. So, some of the stuff like Beast Wars 2 Galvatron that Takara Tomy is doing, does this mean it may affect some of the Japanese things on Hasbro's personal development schedule? And they said they could. Because they are two separate companies that share the brand, they're always going to have different priorities. They're always going to be dipping into different things, but also occasionally the same thing. So, similar to like the exclusive nonsense that caused the whole like BotCon Sunstorm fiasco, it is very possible that Hasbro could be like knee deep into developing something just to find out Takara just announced the prototype for it. Not, the left head doesn't always talk to the right head. So they do like confirm, like, yeah, like this, yeah, like if they do something weird, it might conflict. I generally think they would keep enough communication to prevent that. So we will see if that is true. Okay, so here's some additional notes, and these are just little quick paraphrases based on little like flashes of memory. So, 86 will continue with Studio Series, not being replaced by G1. So, if any characters that are still left over from the 86 movie, they're still on the way. No plan on redoing recent combiners for Studio Series G1. Okay, so the combiners are safe for now. They're where people's limited shelf space, so they probably won't be making more than one Titan per year. I think that also accounts for stores' shelf space. Made to order. Tons of ideas, typically fall into a 100 to 200-ish, maybe 250. Anything higher than that would end up being a Haslab instead. They do intend on finishing the animated Beast Wars cast. Now, that is a very loaded response. So by finishing the cast, if you look at animated, they just did the Ratchet, which is again G1ified, but it is a passable animated Ratchet. The Bulkhead previously released is absolutely closer to Prime Bulkhead. The fact that it was released alongside a Blue RC is telling of that. So that does tell me that they intend to make a Bulkhead to complete that cast, but that is your principal cast. That does not really state or mention if we are actually getting Sentinel Prime. Are we getting Ultra Magnus? Are we getting Jazz? Are we getting Wreck-Gar? Well, we kind of got Wreck-Gar too, didn't we? Okay. And then there's like the Decepticon side. On the Decepticon side, all we have gotten is Wasp, and we know there is a Lugnut on the way. And that's basically it. That's basically all it boils down to right now. There's no word of a Megatron, a Soundwave, a Blitzwing, a Black Arachnia. We're in the dark here, but it does sound like they at least want to complete the principal cast. Now, if they do want to finish the animated cast, that means we'd finally get the Constructicons, but I think that's wishful thinking at best. The Beast Wars cast is the one that fascinates me the most because they've already done a lot. If you include Power of the Primes, then they already have an Optimus Primal out. So if you include that, all we really have are just like the Season 2 Transmetal cast that hasn't been done yet. And that's always been the stickler, right? Like getting those Transmetal ones out in modern budget, considering that they have additional modes, and then there's the whole like vac metal or not, though it looks like from Tigerhawk and Megatron we can glean that they're not going to bother with that, which is the correct approach. But it does loosely confirm we are finally going to get those Transmetal ones at some point soon. Still demand for live action characters. Sounds like we might get the rest of Megatron's gang from the last night. That would be interesting because there are a few weird designs in there. Keep in mind, a lot of those were reused models. Onslaught was just long haul, but with a completely different vehicle mode. So how to handle that as a Transformer is actually kind of fascinating because they could technically make it a really involved retool. And then there's still really random ones that they could still do. Day Trader is still on the table. That's a super weird one, but hey, it's a named character in the movie. So do you do that one? There's a lot of realms to still go to in that one, I suppose. Let's see. We're getting smaller Titan figures now, but is the bigger size still possible? When we get to Metroplex, we need to do better than Titan. So they're talking about redoing Metroplex, which already makes me happy. I like the old one, but it definitely does not represent the original G1 Metroplex very well. So they are actually talking about going above the Titan class price point in order to do that toy. That tells me that we might be in a realm of the city bots might actually be in line for Haslab. Because I don't think there's any way to push the retail boundary of a normal Transformer toy above a $200 price point. I think anything beyond that is going to choke at retail level. So, but they are talking about doing bigger ones. They are talking about they will have to go bigger to do Metroplex again. Right now, there's no plan for more G.I. Joe collabs. They're focusing on collabs that can be targeted at casual fans. They're hoping to bring in new Transformer fans with any IP they already enjoy. This makes sense. A lot of the collabs are from really popular current things. Stranger Things, for instance, having 2 already. And just keeping it in-house is probably a lot cheaper for them licensing-wise, but it's not really getting outside of the purview of Transformers. And that makes sense. You need, Magic the Gathering is doing the same thing. I know Magic fans really like to poo-poo all over the, the extended universe stuff, the Universes Beyond subsets. And some of it makes sense, like Final Fantasy, Lord of the Rings, I think makes sense in the realm of Magic. Ninja Turtles, Star Trek, not so much. But it does bring in outside fans, and that's what you want. Bring them in, get them to have a taste of the experience of Transformers, in this case, and hope that they stick around to indulge in the main stuff because they liked what they found. That's the idea. That's the purpose of collab is as much marketing as it is just getting out a fun figure. We're continuing the behind-the-scenes posts on Instagram. They love to do monthly live streams or video showcasing. It's hard since they have one production team for all the Hasbro brands. So again, it's more of a time thing. We have kids who like the fan lines. We have fans who like the kids lines. Try to do our best to satisfy both groups. We're talking about balancing between appealing to kids and appealing to collectors. They basically try to make sure everything appeals to everyone in some way. So they did announce they are porting. They did reveal, like, obviously we know from Pulse they're importing the Takara one, but they will likely not release it themselves because that option is available to them. It's just easier for them to import it. That basically just means that, like, the big exclusive, like the big fancy things that Takara ends up dropping as part of T-Spark, probably like on an import only basis, not something they would release themselves. See, there's a mention. Let's see, any input from Hasbro on Takara's new Legends line? There is discussion, and Takara has the distribution rights, so they are talking about it. So there is a little bit of input, but mostly that does seem to be something that's just entirely on Takara to come up with. Concept line. They would still fall under Studio Series. And then, like, there's a mention that Breakaway, some of those, like, toy exclusive characters, they did mention the toy exclusive characters previously in this interview, as something that would still be fun to see. Is it possible to stop using rubber tires? And the only answer was, we use them rarely. No, stop using them. Like, for the love of God, stop using them. They are literally wrecking every toy you put them on. I don't know what it is about modern rubber that Hasbro is using, but I should not be looking at Lego parts to replace the tires on my Transformers before they destroy the toy itself or any toy they happen to be touching at the time. Favorite transform mechanism to implement? Appearance in alt mode. I live for the appearance in alt mode. So for me, red alert, which is fascinating because I think a lot of us think of the alt mode as secondary. But in a sense, you know, we can't ignore that it's also a vehicle toy. And then to finish up the note section, priorities for Studio Series. All of them. Which basically tells me the Studio Series is just going to become a menagerie of Transformer characters, not necessarily live action, 86, anything. It's going to be a little bit of everything. It's basically Studio Series is going to take over what Generations has been doing for the last 10 odd years or so, and then Generations just becomes just the playground for whatever random things they want to do. So it's an interesting time, and it's an interesting mix that we're going to be in for here. But that's everything in the interview. That's my thoughts. So thank you all for watching. I will leave it off here, and as always, I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.